Alright everyone, it's time to talk about how Vermont is now an alcohol juggernaut. People think of us as being like some dairy farms and maple syrup and skiing. And that's basically what they think of Vermont if they know we exist at all. But did you know that Vermont is actually a giant of alcohol at this point? We've got like so many breweries have gone up in the state, not just breweries, but also vineyards for wine. There are winemaking operations now within the state, to the point at which the Champlain Valley is like the miniaturized version of the Napa Valley almost. You see four or five different stands of wine on that in that relatively small land area. It's like smaller than any Napa Valley county in California, and yet has just as many places making wine. We've got distilleries in the state now, and I think my thoughts on this are multiple. In the first sense, economically speaking, it's great for our state, and it provides jobs that are above minimum wage, which is lovely since no other industry in Vermont seems to be doing that. Anybody else is screwed. You got to work double shift at Wendy's or something. You got to take up a second job to make ends meet generally. Very few people have escaped this daily rat race grind unless they were independently wealthy or they're like a retiree or something. The youth just goes to other states. But if you're lucky to get a job in a brewery, shipping, you can make like 15, 20 an hour in some of these shipping firms. If you're working in brewing itself, that's more skilled labor than flipping burgers, so you're making more money. And some of these places are at any given time hiring for at least a few positions. And then of course you need like managers, people to look over the factory floor essentially, the brewing area, and they make even more. So economically, it's like the only thing growing and saving our state. And wineries would be the same thing. It's a cash cow. Because you slap the term Vermont on basically anything and it doubles in value. Because people from out of state think that it's superior because, it's here we've got clean water and trees and stuff. And so, obviously the products are cleaner. I think there are a lot of people, they're like upper middle classers from the metro area of like New York to DC. They come here and they just feel like everything they're consuming is automatically better. It's superior in quality because Vermont to them is like this rustic, clean shireling place. And that's partially true. In all honesty, yeah, the beer is brewed with very clean water. Can't imagine it requires quite as much filtration as somebody who's intaking their water in Boston Harbor or something like that. Yeah, the East River of New York City or something like that is going to require some processing to remove the little bits of dead body out of it or something like that. The oil slick. So yeah, it's kind of true. But we've also got to be honest about the slightly darker side of alcohol, which is, of course, alcoholism is a prevalent problem in the United States. That alcohol kills a great many. It's number 2 only behind tobacco when it comes to substances that actually cause abuse of said substance and or death or injury resulting thereof. Now, in fact, for the most part, if a person is smoking and they suffer repercussions, they have a heart attack or something, they're the one that dies. They're the one that goes to the hospital. With alcohol, a lot of times it involves, though, other people because it's someone gets drunk and gets violent, attacks somebody, beats their wife, somebody gets drunk, goes driving. Big mistake, by the way. If you're doing that, it's like the worst idea you could possibly make. And so they get themselves killed or they run into another car. Maybe some little kid now is paralyzed for life because somebody else decided to slug down a six-pack and go for a nighttime drive or something like that. We do have to be honest that there's really not, other than appearance and marketing, is there really any difference between Governor of Vermont visits microbrewery and they have like a picture of him slugging down a beer? Obama did this too. He'd go to breweries and he'd have a photo op with his piss beer or something like that. He didn't even have good fucking taste in beers. He'd go, yeah, I'm going to brew my own in the White House. It's going to be so good. It probably tastes like, piss water like most beers tend to, unless they're made properly. What's the difference between him saying, yeah, Vermont beer is great and drinking, and maybe the governor of like North Carolina saying, yeah, North Carolina's got the best tobacco. Let me ram this pack into my mouth and light it with a blowtorch. I can feel the tumors growing deep inside. What's really the difference between these two things other than we have the perception that one is safer than the other because it's more commonly consumed at this point? Alcohol's much more commonly used now than tobacco is. and it has a better marketing strategy behind it. What's really the difference between those two? I'm scratching my head and thinking about it for a moment, finding there is no real difference. It's a substance. It kills people. It can be addictive. And don't think that I'm talking down to like the brewers of Vermont. Economically, it's good. The beer is certainly tastes better than like Bud Light or something like that. Like it's actually properly made, and it's not like the fake microbrew crap that you get like Samuel Adams. Oh, we do small batch micro brewing. Oh, we were the first microbrewery. Now your beer, it tastes like Budweiser. If you were to take Samuel Adams and Budweiser and put them in unmarked cups and ask the average person to tell the difference, whether they knew about the brands and had tasted them before or not, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Your beer sucks. It's piss water. It's the same as Bud Light or Budweiser itself or Busch or any of these old things. From the 40 ounces on through the fake microbrewing of some of these companies. They bill themselves as microbreweries. They're really not. They're a national or sometimes even international brand, or they're a subsidiary, like I think it was Goose IPA. I think they're from Chicago, if I remember. They got bought out by, what was it, Budweiser or Coors, or one of these other large companies bought them out. So it's still technically kind of a local microbrew, but now it's owned by a parent company that's international, so it's no longer counts. And you get this over and over. In Vermont, you have something different. Like Long Trail is an independent brewing company. Like I can go and see the actual brewery. There's no parent company doing that. Magic Hat up in Burlington would be the same thing. And all these other local beers. In fact, the state of Vermont, I don't think would ever let them get bought out by a parent company. We've got an aversion to that in this state. It's one of the good things for local businesses in this state is they're kind of... that's taken off the table so they can maintain independence. It can cause problems with trying to expand because of the high tax rate, but it does help keep Vermont an actual Vermont brand, as opposed to, oh, this is made in Vermont, but the parent company's in Tokyo or something like that. But we do have to be honest. That wine making and distilling and brewing beer does contribute to people's alcoholism. We do have to be forthcoming. When the state says, oh, here's a cute picture of the governor who is a stock car racer, never forget that, he's cool, or so he won at Thunder Road, who cares? Here's Phil Scott downing a pint. This is great, and Vermont brewing is great, and alcohol is pretty fun. How's that different from if somebody in Dixieland or the Mid-Atlantic with a tobacco state were to say, oh, I smoke these Marlboros are great, I smoke them every day, American cigarettes are the best, and my state does it best. How is it really different? I fail to see how it is. I think it's the same thing. Differential death rate aside, we do need to be, I think, a little bit honest about that. Not kicking the breweries or anything. Like, I mostly don't drink now. A glass of wine, yeah, okay, maybe, or a beer, which is what I was doing years ago. But for a while there, I was drinking a lot more, and I needed to cut that out. So I just went like stone cold sober for several weeks. And then I, had some wine because I needed to prove to myself that I wouldn't fall right back into like drinking every day again. And now I'm like, well, take it or leave it, mostly leave it. Which means like the quality of the videos, I think, has improved since I stopped basically drinking. Because I'm more clear-minded, honestly. But it is basically, it's not as stigmatized a habit, generally. Alcoholism is stigmatized, but for like people who are moderate drinkers, there's no stigma attached to it. It's basically, yeah, I had a couple beers watching the game. Oh, I had a glass of wine last night. It was fun. And there's no stigma associated with the occasional and moderate use of alcohol, because it's good at marketing and because a lot more people drink than smoke. That's really the only difference, fundamentally. You can still get addicted to it. It's a little bit less common. Most people, I think, do find it easier to moderately drink than to socially smoke, like social smoking. I've heard that mentioned. I think it's such a terrible idea. It's like, if you're not addicted to tobacco, you shouldn't be using tobacco products. Don't even think about using them. It's a terrible idea. It's just like, you got like a past of alcoholism or something. Like, tobacco is invariably going to be an addiction risk for anyone. With alcohol, it's sort of hit and miss. Some people, they can drink and they never crave it, and they're like, oh, what's this shit? And others are like, oh, I gotta have more of that fermented nectar. it would be like somebody who has already like knew they were predisposed to alcoholism saying, yeah, I'm just a social drinker. I had a couple of cocktails, and they do that every weekend, and pretty soon they're having those at home too, and they're like, oh, well, I think there's a problem here. And that's basically how it works. Alcohol is perhaps less dangerous, generally speaking. There are fewer deaths associated with it. And the breweries, they provide good jobs. And, wineries, they're pretty, and you have all these lovely grapes. And you get other byproducts, too. It's not just the wine. Some of these vineyards, they're also selling fresh grapes. They're making preserves and stuff. And by the way, real fruit preserves is so much tastier than what you're going to buy in the store. It's been sitting there for 6 months. You're getting it locally. It's, some nice spiced jam, peach jam or something like that. It's going to be amazing. But it's mostly about the alcohol, honestly. And then you have the waste removal problem. They brought this up a few weeks ago in the news regarding the breweries discharging like the used water. Now, this material is not particularly damaging to the environment, but they're worried about the temperature difference. They're worried that it'll change the temperature downstream and affect the various flora and fauna in and around the water. That's a legit concern, although I don't know it's the greatest concern, honestly, we could have. I'd be much more worried about all that fertilizer runoff from up around Burlington that keeps poisoning Lake Champlain. And finally, they were like, we need to expand the waterfront and make this into a park to help with drainage. And, we need to put species in here that'll sap off some of that fertilizer. And we need to increase the distance between the water and the edge of any farming activity in and around the watershed and stuff like that. I'd be more worried, I think, about that than, a few breweries discharging used water that happens to be lukewarm. I'm not sure that's the worst thing that could happen, honestly, in the state. That's about all. Peace out.